Love the Drive Home podcast. Love it. I used to be a lot more precious about books than I am now. And then it's funny because you know how Tim can't stand when he gets a book and it's dented in the mail and he just flips out. But he's the one who taught me how to take my baking books and my cookery books and just like embrace that they're going to get dirty. They're going to get marks on them. They're going to get dings. That's a well-used book. So now I just embrace it. Big old stain on my book, that's okay.
I'm Colin Green, and you are listening to Spike Pit, a rockin' RPG podcast. Strap in and enjoy the ride. And if the sound of Ivy the Happy Whisk doesn't cheer you up, I can't help you. You're beyond saving, I'm afraid. For more of that enthusiasm and exuberance, go check out Ivy's podcast, The Happy Whisk. She's back on the air again after a little bit of time away from the mic. Picking up on what she was talking about, well-used books, I'm using that as the theme of this episode. It's kind of a little bit of a tenuous link at times, but who doesn't like to get good use out of their books? Just lately, I've been thinking again, I need to visit some more of my collection. Trouble is, you can only play so many games, and you get into a campaign and you don't want to leave it. It's the perennial problem. But I'm messing with some ideas. I'll see what I can do. But in the meantime, let's get to some listener feedback.
Hey Colin, it's Cody. I just got done listening to your last episode, and I wanted to call in and let you know it put a smile on my face, and I thought it was really sweet and well written. And anyway, I just missed talking to you, so I thought I'd give you a call in. I am still listening to your show. I just haven't gotten around to doing a call in a while. So anyway, bud, I hope everything's well with you and yours, and everyone is staying safe over there. And I hope things go well with your change and your career path and all of that kind of stuff. Anyway, I will talk to you later. Have a nice day. Bye.
Hey there, Colin. It's John here. Just finished listening to your latest episode. I just wanted to say I really enjoyed it. I thought your sort of prosaic description of D&D was really great. It's probably one of the best descriptions I've heard describing why we play these games, what we get out of them. Thought it was absolutely brilliant. Also, got to say, I quite like the sort of bright yellow new sort of logo you've got for your podcast. Really makes it sort of jump out and stand out. So just dropping you a call to basically say, keep up the good work, dude. I'll catch you soon. Well, and I'll probably see you on Friday for Old School Essentials. Take it easy, chap.
Cody M and John Large there. Thanks for the kind words, guys. It looks like I might have, in fact, caused a bit of confusion. I mentioned before that I took down a couple of episodes for that very reason, and there it sounds like there might be a little bit of evidence to that effect. I did some readings from the introduction and preface from the 5e Player's Handbook, and also the some of the notes from the start of the BX. I can't exactly remember what that's called, if it's an introduction or a preface. Not too sure. Anyway, I perhaps could have jumped in there and clarified the situation on the episodes, but listening back, whilst it sounds like some people enjoyed the content, the presentation, I feel, left a bit to be desired. So so I've took them down, going to rework them. As for the logo, that's one of them things. I needed to sort something out. I was doing some YouTube and looking at some of my other social media, and there's sort of all different images that kind of need to display on different screens, and it gets a little bit tricky, and I'm no logo designer, and I just wanted something quite simple. It might just be a placeholder, but I wanted something that would pop. So that's what I went for. So thanks John. That's John of Red Dice Diaries and a mysterious Cody M. Now, Cody used to put out a podcast. We haven't heard from him for a little while, but check out his back catalogue. That's No Save for You.
Hey, Spike Pit, you know what? It's really true. And I think of all the people that we've become friends with through gaming, even though I don't game, but hubby does. Just absolutely fantastic. Really, really, it really is a wonderful, I call it a community. I think it is a community, and I think it kicks ass.
I can't remember what Ivy is referring to now, but I must have been talking about the gaming community, and she's right, it does kick ass. I, unfortunately, have over the past couple of days decided that I need to make some rough decisions. I've got to pull out of some online games. I talked about it. I've got my training coming online with the teaching, and I've just been feeling, I've got to say, burnt out with the online games. I've got a couple of fortnightly sessions that I'm still in, and that's because I don't want to give up everything. I've just had to make some tough choices, and basically I've just stayed in the games that have been the longest running game. So I'm continuing in John Large's game and Smoke and Snow and Kevin Madison's game. I've been playing in that for years, and the way I see it, I've just I don't know. It's just really difficult. Didn't want to let anybody down. Didn't want to cause any offence, but I worked out, say, this weekend, about 9 hours of gaming at least scheduled. I've done less work than that this week. The weather's been bad. I'm just looking forward to getting into some steadier occupation with this teaching, and screw gardening. I'm done with that, man. So there's only so much fantasy that I can handle. Just lately sat in front of a computer a lot, doing YouTube, doing podcasts, trying to sort of learn some computer skills and brush up on that stuff. I think I've just overdosed, really. And I've got to get my head in the game, get into the education theory, read some books. This is not a rehearsal. So I just want to, publicly thank my GMs and the guys that have put the time in, fellow players that I've gamed with, and just want to say a great bunch of folks that I've met through podcasting and become involved with, and they've graciously shared of their time around the virtual table. Hopefully after a bit of a rest, my enthusiasm will recover somewhat, and once I know what I'm getting myself into with regards to the new career and things maybe settle down, perhaps I can once again, make a few more commitments.
Hey Colin, Jay, I loved episode 362, man. You and your van, bit of rock music, and wow, got me inspired about listening to you talk about basic 5e and kind of mashing up stuff from all over the place. Excellent episode, man. The energy you have when you're out there driving is absolutely fantastic, and just really enjoyed it. I just want to say thank you, and my goodness, have you got my brain going? So all sorts of ideas whizzing around. Going to have to obviously rein it all in. But I just love listening to you, man. So game on. Thanks.
You may or may not be aware that Che Webster of Roleplay Rescue is in fact an educator himself. He teaches in a secondary school and quite often talks about some of the problems of getting worn down by the job, say, and then how that impacts on the hobby, and finding time for the hobby. And we've spoken together before about the importance of making time for your hobby, but striking that balance is a tricky one. So I put that in there as a bit of a segue. On a more positive note, Che mentions the sort of the enthusiasm I've got for this 5e project, and the next series of calls refers to that. But I am running into a little bit of a difficulty with it that I will move on to once we've listened to these following call-ins.
Hey Colin, this is Menion, also known as Rob, calling in to respond to the idea of changing or starting with an older edition of a game and then making house rules and, as you said, more modern elements. I don't think it changes the game. In fact, I would argue that that's how those games are supposed to be played. So if you're coming from BX or original D&D or AD&D and you're adding in certain rules, that's merely how you're supposed to do it. I mean, we always interpreted those games in our own inimical way. Is that the right word? Inimicable way. We made our own decisions about what the rules were saying and how to interpret them and how to execute them at the table. Also, I think the idea of introducing more modern elements or components into an old school game, the idea of that being somehow sort of contradictory or at odds with the idea, the point of playing old school games in the first place, I don't think that's a problem. Because modern elements is what's happening now and the game you're using now. And that's always been the case. Back in 1985, when we were using those games, we were adding in what we wanted to add in then, including many elements that people say are modern today. In fact, they're not modern. They've always been around, and they've just been sort of codified into the rules. And so, I don't know. What am I saying? So I think, these games, so-called old school games, aren't old school. They're games that you can play now. It's just the rules have been around for a long time. So back in the day, we were using rules that we were coming up with by ourselves, and also things from magazines like White Dwarf or Dragon, Adventurer, and so on, and introducing those into the game. So these are things like fumbles and all sorts of different ideas and modifications of the standard rules of AD&D or BECMI or whatever game that we were playing. And so I would argue that they've always been games to be hacked. We've always hacked them, and there's nothing off color about that. And also, I think I would argue that why do that? Why not start with a more complete rule set? This is often the word people use, complete. I'll probably have to go into another message, but I think it's because it's easier to modify something to taste if it's already very simple at the beginning. So of course you can hack something like 5e and you can turn it into something like Middle-earth, Adventures in Middle-earth. And from what I understand, they're fantastic games. So it is possible. But I mean, then you're actually you're taking out stuff from the game. When I was considering a more kind of old school feel for my 5e, I arrived at the decision that it was just easiest to start with a BX style game, because by the time I changed it would be so closer to BX than 5e. So there was no point of starting from that point. That more complicated edition. Similar, I guess we can say similar things of Pathfinder. So, what I want to say, just hack away, and the early editions are great places to start from. Cheers, man. Bye bye.
Menion, aka Rob. Confessions of a Wee Timorous Bushi. There was a lot to unpack there, and if I said I wasn't confused, I would be a liar. Man, I was confused. I've got to tell you that Rob did invite me, if I had further queries or things I wanted to clarify, to get in touch with him and we could discuss it. But I don't know where to start. I think I agree. I think I agree with what he's saying. It sounds like, yep, hack away. That's fine. That's what we've always done as role-playing gamers, certainly. But I was a little bit confused because it sounds like maybe Rob was having an argument with somebody about something, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure his sort of like counterpoint was directed at something that I've said, because I don't know. Or is it sort of a theoretical argument? I think it's a theoretical argument and sort of like questions he's got in his own mind. Obviously, Rob, if you're listening and you want to clarify, feel free. One of the things I'd pick up on is the idea that sort of it sounded like this idea that nothing's new, it's kind of all been done before. But I do think things crop up like the usage die. No doubt somebody's kind of thought of that before it was published and kind of popularised, but in my experience that hasn't been around for very long as one example. And as a kid I never had anything that would resemble a usage die. We just would say, write down the equipment, from the equipment list, and mark off arrows, mark off rations and things like that. So that's one idea that I'd point to, that when I talk about modernising a game, that was what I was talking about. Also the idea that there isn't an old school because modern is what we're playing now. And I can agree with that. If you're playing a game, it doesn't really matter how old the rules are. If you're playing it now, I guess it's modern at that point, which is interesting. I don't think I've really heard anybody sort of put that out there, so that was cool. But the bit at the end got me pretty confused. I'm not looking to take an old rule set. That's the thing. So I'm taking basic 5th edition and then stripping stuff away. And I would actually disagree on the point that isn't it easier to start off with something basic and build on it? And my response to that would be, well, it depends how your mind works. I've got a bit of a potentially long and complicated analogy that involves my college days, but maybe it would be simpler to say it's a little bit like when you're building furniture, or compared to, say, the difference of building furniture where you're doing joinery and putting things together, as opposed to maybe taking a massive lump of wood and doing a chainsaw carving. It's sort of two very different things. And with 5th edition, the reason I didn't fancy like just starting from scratch and building something was I just looked at the books and thought, I'm not using a lot of this stuff. And in my mind, I was just stripping it away. So I thought, well, why don't I just do this in a more methodical, follow a more methodical procedure and systematically just go through those basic rules and take stuff away. And then what I'm left with is the stuff I regularly use, and that effectively becomes my hacked version of the game. Well, that is easily said, a little bit more difficult to achieve, and then you get into the problem where it just starts to look like another game that I've got a lot of time for, and you think, perhaps I'm just reinventing the wheel and wasting my time. I will persevere for now. But thanks for the call in, Rob. It was awesome, but I have to confess to being a little bit confused. Sorry I didn't pick up on your invitation to discuss it some more, but perhaps we can throw it out to everybody and we can all have a joint conversation.
Hey Colin, Jason here. Interesting topic, your O5R thing. I think, like you say, the title is important. So you mentioned West Marches and Open Table. And although some people kind of conflate them, the problem is in Open Tables, the GM announces an adventure and people sign up, whether they played in the last one or not. West Marches, the players have to go to the GM and the players do all the scheduling work and the prep work. So they're fundamentally different things. And I've seen I've seen problems with West Marches games where players don't understand that and the GM's like, no, it's on you. You have to schedule this, and it's shifting all that to the players. That's not good or bad. It's just, like you say, definitions are important. I think if you say O5R, it assumes that it's based around 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, where we look at like all the house rules that Rob C. over Down the Heat does, they're not based around 5e. So his wouldn't be O5R. And like you say, if you say the spike hack or the spike pick hack, I think it's going to be a version of the black hack at that point. So yeah, I think the terms are very important. And I think it is useful to, you could just say, Spike Pick's 5e hack or, Rob's BX hack. But at the same time, having a evocative name is always a good thing, as you mentioned on your episode about naming your campaigns. So I think it's an interesting idea. I look forward to hearing the podcast that are going to be coming out, following along. And yeah, so I'll talk to you soon. Take care, my friend.
This path of the importance of language is a well-trodden one on this podcast and other podcasts, in fact. And you can get an example of this on Jason's most recent episode as of mid-March 2021. He has had like 17 callers, myself included, and other folks from what we call the Anchorite community, I guess, gaming podcast community, calling in with their definitions of light games, heavy games, crunchy games. What does all that terminology mean? I think it is certainly helpful, and I've got back to him with a call in. I'm not going to talk about that here now. I would urge you to go and perhaps listen to the fallout from that episode, listen to that episode itself. It is, I found it to be well done and very interesting, and some great contributions from everybody. It was quite heartwarming to hear everybody rally to the cause. I don't know if I need to clarify, listening to Jason now, I don't know if I need to clarify that I do understand that Rob is a BX. Rob from Down in a Heap is a BX man, and yeah, I don't think I was insinuating that he would be doing something O5R. Clearly, it's a different thing altogether, and I think Jason's perhaps right there. In some ways, the easiest thing would be to say, oh, this is the Spike Pit 5e hack, or this is the Rob BX hack. But yeah, it just hasn't got that right ring to it, and an evocative name would be cool. But, West Marches is probably an evocative name, but see, it has led to confusion. Jason's example was spot on. Yeah, it is not the same as an open table. It's like an open table in many respects, but it would be handy if you could transmit that kind of player-led direction that West Marches has, without constantly having to refer newcomers to a blog. And I know people don't see eye to eye on this. They feel like, well, that's not too much to ask. But I'm just thinking, couldn't we use simple terminology and think these things through a little bit? And I don't know. It's just horses for courses. No doubt everybody's fed up of talking about it at this point, so I'm going to give it a rest and move on to the next caller.
Just listened to episode 360. Holy cow, you're up to episode 3 or over 360, because I'm going from, I think you're at 361 now. Mind blown. Very good job, Colin. Keep up the great work, Spike Pit, and I will catch you in the next podcast.
And that, as they say, is a wrap. Big thanks goes out to you, the listener, for taking a bit of time out of your day to listen to Old Spike Pit. Take care, and I'll catch you later. Oh dear, whoops. I now realise that I was going to talk about a little problem that I've got with my hack, but I'm afraid that's going to have to wait till next episode. Perhaps I'll put that out and leave it up. Dang it.